The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence reports that 20 people are physically abused every minute in the United States of America. That equates to 10 million or over 10 million people who are physically abused in domestic violence relationships every single year. That's 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men being physically abused every single year. Taking that into consideration, I felt like it was important to sit down with people who have had experiences with domestic violence or been victims of domestic violence themselves, who have been abused. And this is going to be an ongoing conversation that we would have here at The Sheldon Show. This brings me to another reason why I've started this YouTube channel. It is to allow people who have everyday issues going on in their lives to be able to share their personal struggles so that other people can learn from those struggles as well. So join me as we get going, not just with this particular, addressing this particular issue in terms of looking at domestic violence or domestic abuse, but all the other discussions that we're going to have here at The Sheldon Show. Thank you again for joining. Now, don't forget to subscribe if you like the material that we're having on our channel. Don't forget to like our videos as well. We'll have a whole lot more coming for you. Thank you again, and looking forward to seeing you next time. Hello, and welcome back to the ongoing series that I have going about domestic violence and domestic abuse. And so now I'm here sitting with Sheila, and she's also going to continue talking about her experiences that she's had and friends or family have had with domestic violence or domestic abuse. So I'll have you just kind of introduce yourself at first, your name, who you are, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. My name is Sheila Woods.
And anything else you want to say? And she's a little bit nervous.
Yes, I'm incredibly nervous.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm 43 years old. I've experienced a little bit of domestic violence when I was younger, but most of it's been friends as I've grown.
All right, so share their stories.
The first one was myself. I was 16 and I had gotten with a guy that thought it was appropriate to control me, to tell me how to dress, what friends I could hang out with and who I couldn't. He didn't like me walking out of the house a certain way, and that would cause problems.
Okay.
And I'm so lucky I was smart enough to get away from that. Now, being that young, it hurt in the beginning, but as time went by, I realized I didn't need that.
Okay.
Then I think I was 18, 19 years old, and there was an older woman that lived around the corner from me, and her husband was very abusive. And one incident that I can think of that just really comes to mind was they had an old red beat-up pickup truck that she drove, and he took a part off of it so it couldn't start because he didn't want her to leave the house that day.
Wow.
And me and a friend of mine and hers had walked up to the 7th Street Theater that used to sit there to watch a movie. And we had walked back, and it was at night, it was dark when we showed back up. And the house was dark, and we thought that was a little odd, so we were wondering if maybe he was there or not. And he just come barreling out of the house. She was 8 months pregnant. He grabbed her by the hair and was dragging her in the house on the ground by the hair at 8 months pregnant.
8 months pregnant.
And she's kicking and screaming, and he's just dragging her all the way in the house, calling her names, cursing her out, telling her, I told you not to leave, and you don't know how to mind, and blah, blah, blah. So me and my friend, we ran around the corner to her house and called 911, and that was that. But she went through that a lot. Black eyes, I would catch bruises.
Yeah.
She left him twice. This is back when domestic violence shelters weren't as private as they are today. They were actually listed in the phone book. And
so he can go back and get her?
Yeah, so he went through the phone book and started cruising domestic violence shelters and seen the big ugly red truck sitting in the parking lot, and he found her. And she went back the first time, and the second time she left, and she left for good. And that was the end of it. But that being said, she did marry another gentleman that was no better than the first. And I'm not making excuses for her, but she grew up with that. She grew up watching her mother be abused.
So it was probably kind of normal for her.
She thought that was what life was about.
Oh, wow.
And that's what relationships were supposed to be, and that's not the case. 20 years ago, we lost my cousin, Bobby. She was 21 years of age. Hadn't been married very long. Second boyfriend she ever had, she married him. And He beat and stabbed her to death in my aunt's house. And my aunt came home from work and found her gone. He ran to New York. He was gone for 3 days. His family in New York turned him in. He was expedited back to Texas and is serving life in prison. Then I knew another woman by the name of Tamara who went through the scenario for 8 years. He was controlling, physically abusive. Who can you hang out with, who you can't, what you can do and what you can't. Monitored her phone conversations, all that.
Wow.
And that was 8 years till she finally escaped. And then last me, my best friend Shauna.
Tell me about that.
January 14th, 2015. 10:30 at night, her boyfriend strangled her to death. He was a drug addict, she was not. He had a history of violence and abuse towards his partners. In fact, his ex-wife had a no-contact order and a restraining order against him. And my best friend met him, fell madly in love, and I didn't like him from the get-go.
Yeah.
I never met him in person, because this was in Spokane, Washington, and I live here in Texas. But I spoke with him on the phone a couple of times, and
You just didn't get a good
I
vibe.
didn't like, I didn't at all. And I told her that, which kind of made her mad.
Yeah.
And there was lots of contact off and on because of that. She knew I didn't like him. Because of him, she was homeless. She was living out of her car off and on for the 4 years they were together. And unbeknownst to me, he was physically, well, it started off with verbal abuse against her and her young daughter, actually. Her young daughter is mixed, and he had the habit of calling the little girl the N-word.
Oh.
And just being very mean.
Yeah.
And Shauna was rather plump woman, and he had a habit of commenting on her weight or her eating habits, or he was just mean. And
So was he using her weight to put her down?
Yes.
You're big, you're fat, you're...
Yeah. You're disgusting.
Yeah.
How can you let yourself be that way?
Yeah.
Or she'd eat, he'd be like, do you really need that? You know, is that necessary?
Yeah.
Now you know that's going to go to your ass or your hips or whatever, you know. And so that's how it started. And then I learned through family, because she quit letting me in.
Yeah.
She didn't want me to know, because in all honesty, I would have got in my car and I would have drove up there and I would have done something.
Yeah.
She was my best friend of 15 years. So that last year, there wasn't a lot of contact, and what little contact we did have, she was hiding stuff from me a lot. I know that they were living in a trailer. She didn't let me know that they had lost it and were
Because
homeless
she was
again.
just embarrassed and ashamed. Yeah.
And she didn't let me know she was homeless again. I know that last year there was an incident at Walmart. They were sleeping in the car and they got into a fight in the parking lot. And where the carts go, the chains that are where the carts go, he actually had her on the ground and had the chain wrapped around her neck and was trying to strangle her. And the Walmart caught it on video and called the cops. And the cops came out, and of course she stood up for him. Oh no, we were just horsing around. We were just horseplaying. He didn't do anything to me. Well, the cops didn't believe it, and they pressed charges. And she finally went to a battered woman's shelter. He went to jail, went to court for it, and they gave him a year's probation and time served, and he was back out on the streets. This happened in August of 2014. And I remember seeing her Facebook posts after that, because she started getting herself back.
Because he was locked up.
For a little while there, yeah. But even when he got out and they would see each other, she was wanting to tell him, I don't need you now. I don't have to put up with this. I don't have to deal with this. I have a place to go. You know, I don't have to deal with this anymore. And so I think that kind of made him mad, because he knew that she was pulling away from him. And I know that a couple of times during that last 6-month period, she asked me for money. I did send her money a couple of times to get a motel room. My husband got aggravated and finally put his foot down and said, hey, look, I can't help them out financially anymore, but if she'll come down here with her daughter, I will give them a place to live. I will help her get a job, and I will help her get on her feet, but I'm not sending her any more money. She got mad at me again, and I think a lot of that had to do with him. So between October and December of 2014, there wasn't a lot of communication. I tried to contact her on holidays. She really didn't respond back. She's kind of mad at me. And then yet again, come January, I get that I am on Facebook from another friend of hers telling me that she was gone. And I was driving down the road with my husband. And something told me to look at my phone, even though I was driving, and you shouldn't look at your phone when you're driving. But something told me to do it. So I did it, and I seen that message. And I had to automatically pull over because the tears started coming, and I was thinking to myself, and I even wrote back, this is a joke. And if it is, y'all are so mean to be texting me this. This can't be true. She sent back, she said, no, it's true. Look online. And that was the afternoon of January 15th, the day after it happened. And of course I did. I sat in the parking lot at QT and looked online, and sure enough, I realized it was true. And I just broke down and started bawling. I just couldn't quit, and I cried for 3 days straight. And I couldn't believe that she was gone. I couldn't believe that this person I loved, that was my sister, my soulmate, my other half, was gone. That I would never hear her laugh. I would never hear her voice, her sarcasm, her quirky sense of humor. That if I had an issue, she'd never be there to call to tell me, it's okay, Sheila, life goes on. You're stronger than that. And I didn't have that anymore. My first reaction was to pick up the phone and call her, and that's what I did, and it went to voicemail. And so I rushed home, and I got on Facebook to Tamara. That's a mutual friend of ours. And I asked, I said, Tamara, what happened? What happened? She said, I don't know. And then the next thing I know, her mom's trying to contact me. And I finally get a hold of her mom. And I find out the story through her mom. Shauna had been in the shelter, but she had been seeing him off and on all these months. And the day that all this happened, she had actually gone to her daughter's basketball game. And the basketball game was over, and she went to meet him. It's called the Downtowner Motel in downtown Spokane, Washington. And it was him, my best friend Shauna, and another woman got this motel room. And the people around them said that the moment that they checked in, they'd been fighting all night long. All night long, fighting, and they could hear them. Now what gets me about this is this motel is in the form of an L, and you drive through the driveway, and the office sits right here on the corner. The L goes like this, and the motel is this way. And their room was right upstairs, literally from the office. And nobody did nothing.
No one did nothing.
Nobody called the cops. Nobody did nothing. And even at one point in time, she got out of the motel room, but he had her keys, her cell phone, her purse, and everything. And so she went to a neighbor to get help. They didn't open the door, and they did not call the cops. When the report was done the following morning after he turned himself in, it was stated that the neighbors heard it and ignored it, and that they...
People don't want to get involved.
And that it had gotten quiet at about 10:30, and that they were relieved that they didn't have to listen to it anymore. And he took her life between 10:30 and 11. What they're thinking is he was on probation from the incident from the following year, and he had been drinking, and yet again he did drugs. So I don't know what drugs he was on, but I know that he had been drinking, so he was not in his correct mind. And they had been fighting, and he was scared the cops were going to be called, and so he strangled. The reports say he strangled her, and he even made the comment, all I did was strangle her.
All I did was strangle her.
Yeah. But in all actuality, from what we're getting, is he actually smothered her. She was on the bed, and he put his knee in her chest and covered her face and mouth to quiet her so the cops wouldn't be called because she wouldn't quit. And she died from that. And after he did it, he told the cops that he actually sat there for an hour and a half and had a conversation with her, that he did not know that she was gone until he realized that he's seen liquid seeping out of her ears, and then checked her and realized that she was deceased. He then left the motel room in her car and went and told all his family and friends what he had done, and nobody turned him in. Now this is 11 o'clock, well, going on midnight. Okay, now this is midnight, and nobody in his family called the cops till 6 o'clock the following morning.
So she was just laying there.
just laying there in that motel room. Now, we know for a fact that one of his nephews and him decided to come back to the motel room. She used to go to a river, a particular river up there. That was her sanctuary and her peaceful spot. And they were actually going to make it look like she had gone to the river for some solitude and somebody had snuck up on her and took her life. But because she was a bigger woman, and Mike Baseman is the one that took her life. He's not a big man, so him and his nephew could not get her out. And so they left her there, went around the rest of the night about their business. About 6 o'clock in the morning, one of his sisters turned him in, and the cops were able to get a hold of him, and they went and picked him up at a local corner store, took him and interrogated him. And yet again, during that interrogation, his statement was, well, all I did was strangle her.
No remorse.
No, he had no remorse at all for what he did, and he only got 17 years. They deemed it a crime of passion. And it being a crime of passion because it was not premeditated, it was not planned. Even though he had told people in the past, including her, I'm going to kill you one day, or I want to kill you. These were statements that were made by him. They still considered it a crime of passion because it was not premeditated. So he did not get life in prison. He got 17 years. Her daughter just turned 14 this year. He's been in prison, I think, since last year. So he'll be out by the time she's in her 30s. So, but if he gets out for good behavior, he can be out by the time she graduates high school.
Wow.
So yeah, that's her story.
What do you think, just your opinion, that it's difficult for a lot of women to get out of these relationships, based on your experience you've had with?
A lot of it's low self-esteem. They don't think they deserve better. They get hooked into these situations, and by the time the man is done, he has such complete control over her that she feels like he's all she's got, because he's took her away from her family.
That's been the consistent theme.
He's blocked her from her friends, which is what Mike did, because there was a lot of times when I'd call Shauna and she'd be like, I can't talk to you right now, he's here. And so they just have a tendency to draw women into their little web, and they feel stuck. And I've noticed that a lot of these men that do this, they do play on vulnerable women that have low self-esteem, because they know those are the easiest ones to get over on. And that's the problem. If more women would realize their worth and see themselves beyond what they think they are, some of these incidences may not happen the way that they do, because that woman will know that she's more worthy and will have the strength to walk away. And a lot of times they don't.
Okay, so for all the women who are going to watch the video and might be going through this, but don't have the strength to necessarily walk away, what do you want to say to them?
Get help. There's somebody out there that will help you. There are organizations, there are hotlines. Tell a family member, tell a friend, tell somebody that can help you gain the strength to do what you need to do, to get out and survive before it is too late and you end up another statistic.
All right, thank you again for joining us. And as I said, this will be an ongoing series looking at domestic violence and domestic abuse. If you like the show, remember to subscribe to our channel and to follow as we keep producing more of these videos and having more of these shows as the weeks keep going on. So looking forward to seeing you again, and thank you for joining us.